Midday Prime. Over the next 1 hour, we'll bring you all the stories and updates from India and the world. We will update you about the happenings in the world of business and sports, and we'll get you some interesting stories that are making headlines. Our top focus is on the developments in Afghanistan, from where evacuations are continuing, even as US President Joe Biden says the US is on pace to meet a 31st of August deadline for evacuations despite previous calls from allies for an extension. The government of India has so far evacuated 626 people from Afghanistan in 7 evacuation flights. First up, the big news of this hour. India continues its Afghanistan evacuation efforts under Operation Devi Shakti. Sikh fraternity expresses joy over bringing back 3 copies of Holy Scripture, Guru Granth Sahib. Special prayers offered in Gurudwaras across the country. Home Ministry issues new visa rules for Afghan nationals. From now on, Afghan nationals can travel to India only on e-visas owing to the prevailing security situation. Previously issued visas to all Afghan nationals who are presently not in India stand cancelled. US President Joe Biden says the US is on pace to meet a 31st of August deadline for evacuations, but hints at contingency plans. EU calls on the Taliban to allow free passage for people to reach the Kabul airport. World Bank holds funding to development projects in Afghanistan. Union Cabinet holds its meeting. FRP for sugarcane increased by 290 rupees. With increased FRP, sugarcane farmers to get 90% of sugar price. Increased FRP to not affect sugar prices for consumers. Ethanol use to be encouraged. Fight against COVID-19 continues. The centre to provide 2 crore additional jabs to states to vaccinate all teachers prior to Teachers' Day. Bihar government opens up state for all economic, social and educational activities. Madhya Pradesh launches 2-day mega vaccination campaign. Schools reopen in Tripura. Rift within Punjab Congress widens further. 4 rebel ministers demand removal of Punjab Chief Minister Amrinder Singh and allege that Amrinder Singh has failed to fulfill promises made to the people. And World Under-20 Athletics Championships participants interact with Sports Minister Anurag Thakur, share their experiences and struggles. Anurag Thakur says athletes have not just won medals but inspired youngsters to join sports. India to play against England at Headingley in Leeds. India gained psychological edge by winning the second test against England, lead with 1-0 in the 5-match series. Let's now go across to a press conference being addressed by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
Should now, as much as possible, also give that facility in that region for greater credit expansion. It's one thing to receive deposits, smaller, medium-sized deposits from that region, from the people who are living in that region, but to have a plan which is so desperately needed so that credit flow for business development in those regions can also be better promoted. So whilst the situation in the western and southern regions of the country, CASA is there, credit requirement is also there, so you are able to utilize that, earn better and also give in better terms for the credit requirement, but that's not so much happening in the eastern and particularly the several states of eastern region. So these were elaborately discussed. I also repeat something which was said earlier. Collectively, public sector banks have all done well. They've come out of the PCA. Today they are able to show clear profits. And individually too, several banks have done very well. They've also shown that they are now in a position to go to the market and raise monies for their growth capital requirements. So today you find the Indian public sector banks, even though they were going through the pandemic, even though they were extending all facilities for all the DBT beneficiaries and so on, through the Bank Mitra, and that is one thing on which I have repeatedly given credit to the banks for having undertaken these kind of work during the pandemic. The amalgamation work, which happened just prior to the pandemic, have not suffered because their attention has gone to serving, during the pandemic. They have completed the process. Today, all banks are sufficiently endowed, and the processes of amalgamation has not let any customer to suffer. Seamlessly, the amalgamations have all happened, and most of the banks are comfortably reporting on the amalgamation related information. So we also launched the EASE, which is the Easy Access and Service Excellence, which was launched after 2015, when Prime Minister had addressed the banks through what was that called? Gyan Sangam. In 2015, when Prime Minister addressed through the Gyan Sangam all the banks, and also spoke about details about how professional they should become, how they can improve on their service experience for the customers and so on. Since then, without any gap, EASE has been launched 1.0, then 2.0, 3.0, and for each one of them a report has been given about how the outcomes are. Banks have improved the customer experiences. Today we launched EASE 4.0. Even that has been achieved by the banks. So I'm glad. There is one announcement which I would want Debashish to himself say, which pertain to the benefits, pensionary benefits and so on. Debashish.
This is in continuation of the 11th bipartite settlement which was signed by the IBA with the unions on 11/11/2020 on wage revision. So from it there was a proposal for enhancement in the family pension and also the employer's contribution under the national pension scheme. So this has also been approved by the Honorable Finance Minister, and the benefits would now accrue to the family pensioner. Earlier, the scheme had slabs of 15, 20 and 30% of the pay that the pensioner drew at that point of time, and it was capped subject to a maximum of 9,284 rupees. So that was a very paltry sum, and Madam Finance Minister was very much concerned and wanted that this should be revised so that they get a decent amount to survive and sustain. So now the cap has been completely removed, and a uniform slab of 30% of the pay that the employee was receiving will be entitled to them as the family pension. So it could go up to as high as 35,000 rupees per family. So that is the first one. The second change that has been brought about is that the employer was contributing 10% by way of contribution to the NPS corpus. 10% was coming from the employee and 10% was being given by the employer. Now this 10% of the employer has been enhanced to 14%, which means a 40% rise in the pension contribution from the banks for the employees. So these are two very significant changes that have been made, and the Government of India, Finance Minister has already approved this, and these benefits would be available to these employees with this change. Thank you.
So I'll add one more bit about the meetings that I've had with the CBDT and with the CBIC and the field formations from the Mumbai region. I was immensely grateful to the customs that during the corona pandemic, they had, without taking any rest, seamlessly moved goods which were coming in to meet the requirements of the hospitals and also the importers, and on that the customs worked tirelessly, and I put on record, which I did before them as well, my appreciation for the way in which customs had worked 24/7, and we hadn't had any complaints coming from anyone saying no, customs is sitting over our goods which have been imported and so on. So customs, I did mention that particularly I'm very thankful. Similarly, the GST officials, you will all recollect that in the last several months, the collection has been kept up, the momentum has been maintained, we've all through maintained on an average over 1 lakh rupees collection per month. And that couldn't have been possible unless the GST officials had, worked very hard, and they did, and therefore there was a word of praise for that. And the new normal, as would the Revenue Secretary would say, will probably be in the range of 1,10,000 per month on an average, and the officers were quite enthused, and I am grateful for that. The CBDT as well has been working very hard, and the direct taxation collection, more importantly, both the GST and the direct taxation have plugged a lot of loopholes, as a result of which the collections have improved. The GST particularly, several instances of gaming the system have all been identified by using the technology available to them. In both the cases, and as is also in the case of the banks, there was a great sense of feeling sad, and condolence was expressed by all of us for all those staff members who have been affected, families who have lost their breadwinner in many cases. Our colleagues who were affected have all succumbed to the COVID, and even that was one of the things on which all of us have expressed deep condolences, and among ourselves made sure that the pensionary and other benefits which have to reach these people and their families will be, and as it is, several of them have already got it, but we shall be looking into helping them so that none of the families have to run from pillar to post, and we shall facilitate that. These are my opening remarks. If anything is to be added at this stage by you, Tarun?
Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Raj from CNBC. Ma'am, you spoke about amalgamation and how that was a smooth process. And maybe the question that what's the status on the bank privatization as well as insurance privatization? How far has it reached? If you give some clarity in terms of who could be the candidates and the concluding factor. And one question, ma'am, various weather predicting agencies have said that the monsoons could be below normal. Ma'am, you can analyze that situation. What kinds of impact do you assess as far as the economy is concerned at this juncture, as well as onto banks when it comes to credit and loan areas in that particular area?
As and when I'm ready to answer on the banks privatization, I will answer. So at this stage, there's nothing for me to say on that, which is your first question. Second question is on the monsoon. The monsoon is still on. Sometimes monsoon in some parts has been erratic. There has been excess rain. Till 2 days before there would have been a shortfall. Delhi, for instance, had nearly a 60% shortfall, which was all made up and went on to the surplus mode within a matter of 6 hours of rain. So at this stage, I think it will be a bit too much for any one of us to safely assess the impact of the monsoon. I'll wait to see it for a bit longer. But monsoon or otherwise, we can see the revival happening, about which I've already mentioned once before. We'll wait for the signals to be even more clearer. But one thing which I further will add, other than the Atmanirbhar announcements and the second announcement after the second wave, I've asked the banks, if you would remember, there was a credit outreach which we did in 2019. The banks went over to all the districts in the country and extended all kinds of credit to meet their demand requirements, and many of them probably did more than proportionately serve the RAM costs, which is the retail, which is agriculture, and which is also the MSME related loans. If that was the outcome, in fact in Parliament also I had answered a question that between October 2019 and March 2021, nearly approximately 4.94 lakh crores which were distributed during this credit outreach between October and March, October 19 and March 21. This year too, from a date which will be determined sometime in October, which the Secretary DFS will announce a bit later, talking to all the banks. However, there will be a credit outreach even this year in every district of the country, and banks would go to have the credit outreach conducted the way they conducted earlier. And also, you would remember that after the second wave, we had announced through the MFIs, microfinance institutions, credit to be given up to a top ceiling of 1.5 lakhs, for which the NBFCs will also help the MFIs to reach out. I understand good progress is being made on that. Debashish will probably brief. So, in order to keep up the momentum of stimulus that we are periodically giving, we've also asked the banks to move out there and give people who would want to borrow from them for any one of their requirements. Anything else you want to add?
My question is on the stock market side now. You have announced last year the direct overseas listing. What is the status now? And we are hearing that we are making a mandatory listing in IFSC if you are going for the direct overseas listing. Is this the plan?
I'll ask Tarun to answer on it.
The direct listing is under consideration of the government because to make it a success, there would be some requirements of amendments in some legislations to ensure that there's a smooth trading of these securities outside the territory of India. So we'll wait, and we are in discussion with the players who are asking for this, and maybe in the budget session we'll see what we can do. But at this point of time, it suffice to say that it is under discussion, and there are some issues which we need to sort out before we can allow. We can allow them, but it should also be a success. For that, we want all the hurdles to be taken care of. As of now, there is no such thing, but when the regulations and the rules come out, we'll get to know. But at this point of time, there is no such compulsion that would be
what is your assessment of the first scheme that is announced for relief to trade with companies and borrowers? There was a credit scheme that was announced up to 6 lakh crore rupees. Are you satisfied with the kind of outreach, especially to certain sections that you're announcing for borrowers, for tourist guides, and extremely vulnerable sections? Are you satisfied with the progress there?
On one particular thing, I would straight tell you on the hawkers. In some regions, we've had very good, success in reaching out to as many possible, and in some other areas it could be better, is my understanding. And in that, a lot depends not just on the banks. The local authorities would have recognized these hawkers in a particular street or a main street. Unless the recognition is given by the local authority, the banks wouldn't be in a position to extend the facility. So there is a lot more interaction which is happening between the banks and the local authorities, because it is the local authority who recognizes and identifies a hawker in a particular area. So in such cases where there are a bit of a work yet to be completed by the local bodies, we are waiting for them to do it. But otherwise, where these details are available for KYC's purpose, yes, it's moving on fast. But Devashish, what do you want to add?
In fact, the scheme is doing very nicely. More than 26 lakh disbursements have happened, and about 29 to 30 lakhs have been sanctioned. The high point in the scheme is that they are all, as ma'am said, they are registered with the urban local bodies. So the vendors, the whereabouts are known. Number two, they are getting onboarded electronically also. So that if they are selling their produce or they are selling their stuff, then they can pay through a QR code. So these are two main features of the scheme. And more than 2,500 crores, 2,600 crores have already been disbursed. So it's moving on very steadily and it's making good progress.
Your question was wider. Just 1 minute on the tourism guides.
Tourism guide, the scheme is actually being designed by the Ministry of Tourism. Although the announcements have been made and necessary financial provisions have been made. The moment the Tourism Ministry finalizes that, the banks will be they are in a position to start the lending.
There too, if you recall, there too, guides who have the central government's identity cards as well as those who have identity cards given by the states are included in the program. So there's a need for coordination between the two, but that will happen sooner. So it's actually not in the ground effective as yet.
What I can say with the ma'am, the emergency that you announced earlier this week.
What is that?
The National Modernization Pipeline, which you announced earlier this week, that will be talking point. There were a lot of comments that have come in on it as well. The part of the opposition also says that this is looking over what happens to get them to look at that same process. You have any response to that?
I'll certainly have a response to that. I wish the opposition questions with some homework done. Who actually monetized the Mumbai-Pune corridor? Was it not the Congress party? Was it not under the Congress party which was headed by and is even now being headed by Srimati Sonia Gandhi? 8,000 odd crores was raised by that. New Delhi railway station. Who called for the RFP on it? Was it not the Congress party? Somewhere between 2008, 5, something like that? New Delhi railway station. RFP call for was made 27/10/2008. 2008. Who was the Prime Minister then? Who was the Finance Minister then? And I would definitely ask Shri Rahul Gandhi, who, even when the Prime Minister was abroad, when he thought one of the ordinances was so outrageous, he tore it up in front of the media. Did he tell this RFP call for the New Delhi railway station to be monetized? Did he tell this out? If he indeed is against monetization, why wasn't the RFP for monetizing New Delhi railway station torn to pieces by Shri Rahul Gandhi? Is this not monetization? And if this is monetization, then did they sell off the railway, New Delhi railway station? Is it owned by Jijaji now? Does he understand what is monetization? And I took the pains even then for, if I may now admit, the sake of the former president of Congress party, because monetization may probably mean something to him. that we're not selling off. There will be a strict handing back. I said it, and I'm sure many in your media friends will remember that those were words which I uttered. So Congress party can every now and then come up with, oh, you're selling off the country, selling. That's something which they are very good at. They sold air, they sold water, they sold land, they sold mines, and made a lot of kickback with it. From 2014, I challenge, if there's been even an allegation, a whisper of allegation against Prime Minister Modi's government. So to lead people to believe something which is not true, to mislead people. I can give you more examples. Examples of those asset monetizations which happened during Congress period. Please ask him to take it all out and then explain it before you if that meant selling of those properties. The monetization pipeline that was announced by me day before yesterday, 2 days ago, there is no change of ownership. The ownership is still with Government of India. They are brownfield assets which are almost completed but are underutilized. If government has to utilize it better, it has to be put through monetization process wherein it will be put to effective use with a bit more addition to spruce it up or to bring it up to the level of utilization. So this is absolutely the obvious. You in the media, particularly those who handle the business and finance and everything else, do understand it. I'm sure you will be able to ask the Congress party about the way in which they jump into conclusions and charge the government about, oh, you're selling away everything which has been built 70 years over. Something like that he did say. 70 years over they built. And what did happen during the Commonwealth Games? Within one Commonwealth Games they finished all that which can be creamed out into the accounts of their cronies. That is their business, not the government of Prime Minister Modi's.
Just a follow-up to that.
I would like to have him guide me.
नमस्ते मैम, सबसे पहले तो आपका धन्यवाद देना चाहेंगे। मुंबई में हमसे मुखातिब हो रही, दिल्ली से उतना होते हैं, मुंबई के मीडिया वालों के पास कभी मौका मिलता है। मैम, जिस तरह से बजट में आपने ऐतिहासिक ऐलान किया था सरकारी बैंक और इंश्योरेंस कंपनी का, तो उसका जो प्रोसेस है वो एक साथ ही होगा आगे चल के, क्योंकि जो कर्मचारी है उनके अंदर काफी ज्यादा घबराहट है और जो कंपनी बच जाएगी सरकारी इंश्योरेंस के अंदर, वहां पर कुछ थोड़ी बहुत और पूंजी डाली जाएगी। और जिस तरह से भारत के इंश्योरेंस सेक्टर की दुनिया भर में काफी चर्चा हो।
There you heard the press briefing by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in Mumbai, where she took on the Congress leadership for questioning the Modi government's decision to launch the national monetization policy. She said there will be no change in ownership of assets that will be monetized. The ownership will remain with the government, and only brownfield assets which have already been completed but underutilized will be monetized. In fact, she took on the Congress leadership for protesting against the national monetization policy and said that the RFP during the Congress regime had called for such monetization for the New Delhi railway station in the past. So what does the Congress party have to say on the decisions of the Congress regimes of the past? Besides that, she launched Ease 4.0 reforms for the public sector banks, and she spoke about the need to increase credit flow. She said that with changed times, now industries have the option of raising funds even outside the banking sector, and banks themselves are raising funds through various avenues, and these new aspects need to be studied to target credit where it is needed, and that banks have been directed to interact regularly with the Federation of Indian Exporters Organization of FIO, so that exporters don't have to shuttle between various bankers. And this was also an occasion where under Ease 3.0 awards were given to several public sector banks in Mumbai for simple and smart banking. So those were some of the highlights of the press conference by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Let's get started with the big news at this hour. carrying out the evacuation missions from war-torn Afghanistan under Operation Devi Shakti. A total of 626 people have been evacuated from Afghanistan till now. 3 copies of Swaroop of the Sikh sacred scripture, Guru Granth Sahib, were also brought back. The Sikh community across the country is happier with the safe evacuation of the 3 copies of the Holy Scripture, Shri Guru Granth Sahib, from war-torn Afghanistan to India. On the one hand, the Sikh community in Jammu appreciated Government of India's efforts for safe evacuation of the Holy Scripture. On the other hand, the Sikh community in Punjab thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the evacuation of Sikhs along with the Holy Scripture from Afghanistan. The Sikh community of Rajasthan also expressed happiness over the safe evacuation.
दुखद घटना जो अफगानिस्तान में हुई है, लेकिन वहाँ से जैसे सरकार ने गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी को और बाकी जो यहाँ पर लाए हिंदुस्तान में, उसको हम बड़ा वेलकम करते हैं। सरकार का एक वेलकम स्टेप है, हम इसकी बहुत ही सराहना करते हैं। तो हम इसको अच्छी तरह से देखते हैं कि ये बहुत ही अच्छी चीज़ जो सरकार ने हवाले की है।
हमारी कौम ऋणी है आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी का, हमारे 3 गुरु ग्रंथ साहब के स्वरूप जो कि वहां से तालिबान से हमारे सिख भाई लेके आए और यहाँ हमारे आदरणीय पुरी जी केंद्रीय मंत्री उनके आगमन में और जिस तरह उनको पावन स्वरूप को और गुरुद्वारों में ले जाके जो उनकी सेवा की विराजमान कराया गया, हम इनके बहुत ऋणी हैं। नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने सिद्ध कर दिया जो हमारी कौम का, हमारे गुरुओं का असूल है, मानस की जात सब एक पहचान हो। इतना बड़ा ग्रेट आदमी हम आदरणीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी का तहे दिल से धन्यवाद करते हैं। ईश्वर करे उनकी लंबी आयु।
अफगानिस्तान से गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी की वीर साहिब यहाँ पर सुरक्षित लाई गई, इसके लिए मैं मोदी सरकार व उनकी पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ कि उन्होंने सिखों की व हिंदुस्तान की भावनाओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए यह कदम उठाया, जबकि वहाँ हालात इतने बुरे थे, इतने संघर्ष वाले थे, इतने भयंकर हालातों में भी गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी की वीर साहब को यहाँ लाने पर मैं पूरी तरह से मोदी सरकार व उनकी पूरी टीम को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा और ये आशा करता हूँ कि आगे भी ऐसी ही भावनाओं को ध्यान में रखते हुए हमें सुरक्षा प्रदान करेंगे।
Sant Baba Swaranjit Singh of Baba Wadbag Singh Gurudwara in Una, Himachal Pradesh, expressed happiness over the safe evacuation of the 3 Swaroops or copies of the Holy Scripture, Guru Granth Sahib. He said Prime Minister Narendra Modi is working for all classes and communities of society, and that is praiseworthy.
बहुत अच्छा नजरिया, बहुत अच्छी सोच और बहुत वक्त पे जाके उन स्वरूपों को बड़े ही अदब सत्कार से लेके हिंदुस्तान में आके उनको प्रॉपर तरीके से विराजमान करना, ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। मैं मोदी साहब प्रधानमंत्री जी को अपनी ओर से जम्मू कश्मीर से लेकर कन्याकुमारी तक और बाहर जितने भी लोग हमारे श्रद्धालु लाखों लोग रहते हैं, उनकी ओर से मैं मुबारक पेश करता हूं कि ये आपका जो आपने काम कर दिखाया है, उसके लिए कितनी भी बात कह सकें वो भी कम है। हर छोटे कॉर्नर पे पहुंच के जो आप सोच आपकी है, उसके मुताबिक हर कौम को पूरे इज्जत मान से देख रहे हो, बहुत बड़ी बात है।
And now Supra Shanti, our correspondent, is joining from Hyderabad. Supra Shanti, we've heard voices from all across the country from the Sikh community welcoming the safe evacuation of Afghan Sikhs and other minorities as well as Indian nationals. Besides that, of course, the 3 copies of the Holy Scripture of Guru Granth Sahib. What are you hearing from the Sikh community in Hyderabad? How are they viewing this?
Yeah, this is Afghanistan Gurudwara in Hyderabad. This is one of the important Gurudwaras in Hyderabad, where the Sikh community living in the whole city of Hyderabad and the surrounding areas, they come here in large number every day and offer prayers to the Guru Sahib. So the Sikh community today they are very happy over 2 factors. The one is that the government is going an extra mile to bring back all the stranded Indians from Afghanistan. Not only that, even the Afghanistan Sikh nationals also, they are being brought very safely to India. And the another factor is that the Holy Scriptures, the Holy Book of Guru Granth Sahib, that is also brought back to India with a lot of respect. And you know that the central ministers Hardeep Singh Puri and others, they went to the airport and they received those scriptures, the holy books, and with utmost reverence they carried those holy books. So the Sikh community here in this Gurudwara, they are very happy, and they are thanking the Prime Minister for making extra efforts to help even the communities there living in Afghanistan. Now, not only the Indians who are working there, but also even the Afghan Sikhs also, Sikh community also. So they are also given a helping hand, and they are provided a passage to come back safely.
Absolutely. Can you speak?
So here I'm standing here with I'm standing here with a few Sikhs here, and let us find out their reactions. Sir, what is your reaction, sir? So,
we are overjoyed. We cannot contain our happiness because the government of India has put in great efforts, and for us, the Guru Granth Sahib is the living God, and that's a holy scripture which we believe in. For us, that's a God, and they brought it such respectfully to India, along with the Indian Sikhs, the Afghan Sikhs which were held up there. So we definitely want the government now, they should go one step further and amend the Citizenship Act, also give them safe, the citizenship of India, and make sure that their children can have the education in India, and also they can live here safely. And we really are very, very thankful to the External Affairs Minister, Mr. Hardeep Singh Puri, and Mr. Narendra Modi ji.
Sir, what is your reaction, sir, about how the Sikh community in Afghanistan, how they have given a helping hand to come back safely to India?
We sincerely thank our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji for his efforts in showing secularism and bringing back all the Indians and other Afghan nationals also who are willfully coming to India and helping them for a safe passage. And the most important thing is he has shown utmost respect to our Guru Granth Sahib Ji, our holy book, which we believe as God, back to India with full what you call safety and honor. He has showed all the national secularism and brought all things safely back to India with honor. And I thank on behalf of the Sikh community people, not only from Hyderabad and Secunderabad, but all Telangana and Andhra, everywhere. I thank Narendra Modi ji and the central government for showing very good humanity and bringing everybody safely back to India and providing them with shelter. Thank you very much, Narendra Modi.
So this is a big occasion for you. So are you contemplating any event in this regard in the coming days? Are you planning any event?
As of now, it is not planned, but surely we'll be doing it. We'll coordinate with the Delhi Sikh Management Committee, and we'll together work out something which can for them also we have to look at the future as to how those people can resettle in India. So we'll all come together in a common platform and we'll make sure that those inhabitants are comfortable in India and all that.
Yes.
So we have seen the reactions from the Sikh community here. So they are very happy as the government is going an extra mile to bring back all the Sikh Indians, including those from other community, all communities, irrespective of the religion. Everybody is treated on par, and everybody is given a helping hand.
Absolutely. Stay with us, so Prashanti. Let's now go across to Yogesh Keetal, who is joining us from Mumbai. Yogesh, Nanded is in Maharashtra, and we are aware of the importance that Nanded has in Sikhism. Tell us about that, and also how is the Sikh community in Maharashtra receiving India's humanitarian outreach to Afghan minorities, including Sikhs, and the fact that 3 copies of Guru Granth Sahib were brought to India safely. Yogesh?
That's right, Mohu. You have rightly underlined that the significance of Sikhism in Maharashtra, basically Nanded particularly, if we just take precisely the city Nanded, we know that one of the 5 Takhts is located there, and the last place of Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru of Sikhism. As far as the evacuation process from Afghanistan is concerned, we know that recently we had seen very sparkling visuals, the visuals that touched millions of hearts at this point in time, especially when Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri received the holy scripture of Guru Granth Sahib. We have some Sikh people here. Let's know from them what are their religious sentiments here. Would you like to make any comment on the evacuation process, especially particularly the number of Sikhs were evacuated from there, and also the Guru Granth Sahib?
जब हमने देखा टीवी के ऊपर और न्यूज़ के ऊपर कि हमारे यूनियन मिनिस्टर खुद ही सिर के ऊपर गुरु ग्रंथ साहब का स्वरूप लेके बड़े आदर और सत्कार से आ रहे थे, मन में एक बहुत ही सुकून मिला कि जो है हमारे जो भाई बहन वहाँ पे फंसे हुए थे उनमें से कुछ जो है आए, और जो भी आए हैं देखो इतना किया कि उन्होंने अपनी कोई प्रॉपर्टी नहीं ली, सोने चांदी के गहने नहीं लिए, केवल एक ही जो है चीज थी उनके पास, जो है 3 जो बता रहे हैं, हम देख रहे हैं कि गुरु ग्रंथ साहब की भीड़ सर के ऊपर उठाए हुए वो आ रहे हैं, अपना पूरा घर का छोड़ के सब कुछ छोड़ के जो है उन्होंने केवल जो है गुरु ग्रंथ साहब के स्वरूप साथ में लिए और कुछ नहीं लिया, वो साथ में आ गए हैं। इस चीज को देख के जो है मन एकदम भावुक हो उठा कि आज भी जो है वो भावना है, जो सदका गुरु का है वो जो है, और हमारे धन दौलत का नहीं है। और हम धन्यवाद करते हैं हमारे यूनियन मिनिस्टर जी को, हमारे प्राइम मिनिस्टर को खासकर जो है जिन्होंने ये इनिशिएटिव लिया, और हमारे मिनिस्टर ऑफ एक्सटर्नल अफेयर जिन्होंने जो है ये सब किया, और इसके बाद जो कोऑर्डिनेशन किया है हमारे पुनीत सिंह जी चंडोक जिन्होंने जो हमारे मित्र भी हैं, उन्होंने ये सब जो है पूरी कोऑर्डिनेशन की है। हम इन सब का जो है बहुत बहुत
I also like to talk to some other people. आप हमें ये बताइए कि जिस तरीके से evacuation प्रोसेस चला है, इतने कम समय में इस तरीके से खतरों के बीच से लोगों को निकालना, और फिर उसके बाद कुछ सरकार की तरफ से पूरी टीम की तरीके से काम करना,
बहुत बड़ी बात है। हम तो हमारे बुजुर्ग भी एक टाइम 1947 में जब ब्रिटिश इंडिया के 2 भाग हुए, पाकिस्तान बना, तो वहाँ से आए थे, तो हम तो इनकी जो भावना है वो मतलब दिल के अंदर से फील कर सकते हैं कि हमारे साथ जो हुआ 47 में, हमारा जन्म तो यहीं का है, और हमारे बुजुर्गों के साथ में जो हुआ वो आज हमारे और भाइयों के साथ, चाहे वो हिंदू हैं सिख हैं, मगर बहुत वेदना और बहुत दर्द होता है ये सब जब जमाया कारोबार छोड़ के, मगर वो भी उनकी हिम्मत है जो सब कुछ छोड़ छाड़ के, पर गुरु ग्रंथ साहब जी को उन्होंने नहीं छोड़ा, उन्होंने अपने साथ में लाए। और धन्यवाद है हरदीप सिंह जी पुरी और हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी का, जिन्होंने ये सारा प्रोसेस जो है कोऑर्डिनेट करके, और ये हमारे लोग जो वहाँ फंसे हुए हैं अभी भी, और प्रार्थना है कि जो बाकी लोग वहाँ रह गए हैं उनको भी जल्दी से जल्दी।
इनफैक्ट अंडर वे हम आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि एक चीज बताइए, जिस तरीके से आर्थिक हो, बिजनेस हो, ट्रेड हो, हर जगह जो है सिख कम्युनिटी का काफी ज्यादा उनका वो हमेशा शामिल रहते हैं भारत के विकास में। ऐसे में अफगानिस्तान में भी उनका बिल्कुल जो है वो हिस्सेदारी थी वहाँ पे विकास में, वहाँ के विकास में, लेकिन जिस तरीके से हमने वीडियोज देखे वो बोले हमारा सब कुछ खत्म हो गया इस तरीके से, क्या सेंटिमेंट है और क्या आपको लगता है आने वाले समय में?
जो आपने पूछा है कि आर्थिक विकास में कौम का हर जगह सहयोग रहता है, आज केवल हिंदुस्तान ही नहीं, अफगानिस्तान ही नहीं, दुनिया में जहाँ भी आप चले जाएं, सिख जहाँ भी रहता है वो अपना उस देश को, उस मुल्क को अपना बना के वहाँ काम करता है, और उस मुल्क के आर्थिक विकास में, तरक्की में वो अपना पूरा योगदान अपने तन मन धन के साथ वहाँ निभाता है। और जैसे मेरे भाई साहब जी ने कहा है कि ये जो इस वक्त दुखांत चल रहा है, इसमें सरकार ने बहुत अच्छा रोल निभाया है, और ये बहुत बड़ी बात है कि जैसे सिख जो है वो ज्ञान का पुजारी है, और उस ज्ञान को वो साथ लेके चलता है जहाँ भी जाए, और उसी ज्ञान को इस वक्त भी अफगानिस्तान से वो लेके अपने साथ हिंदुस्तान पहुँचे हैं। और मैं आस रखता हूँ कि बहुत जल्दी ये जो मसला चल रहा है इसमें जो इसका हल निकले, और जो दुखांत आज दुनिया देख रही है और जो खतरा दुनिया देख रही है उससे हमें निजात मिले।
So Munmun, you can basically these people are just sharing their sentiments, religious sentiments as well as their sentiments for the country they are living in. And we are currently in Dadar Gurdwara, and the similar sentiments you can see in across the Maharashtra, not only in Nanded, which is definitely one of the major places when it comes to Sikhism, but also the other pockets of Maharashtra. The similar reactions we have been witnessing since the day one, and also we had a word with some of the local people apart from Mumbai, Thane, Palghar, and also the local area like in Nanded, some Vidarbha area, Marathwada area. All people have similar sentiments that the way the evacuation process are underway, they are appreciating, they are extending their gratitude to the government to rescue all the people stranded there, and also particularly for the incident that have come into light, and they were discussing that the Guru Granth Sahib, the copies of the scripture, the Holy Scripture book. So they are, in fact, they are extending their gratitude to the government of India. Yeah, Munmun, over to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Subrashanti, as well as Yogesh Sheetal, for joining us and telling us the sentiments of people in different parts of the country from the Sikh community on the safe evacuation of Sikhs, as well as on the safe evacuation of 3 copies of the Holy Scripture of the Sikhs. Let's move on now. On the latest situation as far as Afghanistan evacuation is concerned, Afghans face an increasingly desperate race to escape life under the Taliban after US President Joe Biden confirmed US-led evacuations will end next week. More than 70,000 people have already been evacuated, but huge crowds remain outside the Kabul airport, hoping to flee the threat of reprisals and repression in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Many Afghans fear a repeat of the brutal 5-year Taliban regime that was toppled in 2001 and violent retribution for working with foreign militaries, Western missions and the previous US-backed government. Washington and its allies have been flying out thousands of such Afghans every day on hulking military transport planes, but it has become an increasingly difficult and desperate task. Meanwhile, the evacuation process of Americans and tens of thousands of others from Afghanistan's capital is accelerating. Around 6,000 US soldiers and more than 1,000 from the UK are at the Kabul airport to secure it and organize the evacuation of foreigners and eligible Afghans. Smaller contingents from other NATO members, including France, Germany and Turkey, are also present. Talking to the media, the UK PM, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said 9,000 people have been taken out of Kabul by the UK alone.
This is an extraordinary airlift. We've evacuated 9,000. The UK alone has taken 9,000 people out of Kabul. I think 57 flights. Huge effort by our military, and we will go on right up until the last moment that we can. But we're confident we can get thousands more out. But the situation at the airport is not getting any better. There are public order issues. There are harrowing scenes for those who are trying to get out, and it's tough for our military as well.
Amid the evacuation process, the US military has released images and video of soldiers interacting and playing with Afghan children at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. The children were waiting to be evacuated. Meanwhile, Germany and other nations are also working at full capacity to get as many people out of Afghanistan as possible before the 31st of August. In Germany's US Ramstein Air Base, 7,000 evacuees have been flown in. The base has a capacity for 12,000 and is offering first aid, food, water and care to refugees coming in from Kabul. So far, 37 planes have landed at Ramstein. From there, the evacuees are being taken to further locations by civilian aircraft. On Tuesday, 700 evacuees were relocated from the US base.
People coming off the aircraft appear to be extremely resilient. They're very happy to be here on German soil. They seem to be very appreciative and actually in very good spirits, which, considering everything they've been through in the past week or so, is really great to see.
Into the Kabul airport, it's very hard because outside of the airport are Taliban. Okay, the Taliban are beating them and they are firing on them. They are killing them, and it's very hard to enter to the airport. Yes. And also there is no one can support them to bring them to the airport.
All the people are afraid of this situation of Afghanistan, especially the ladies. The ladies are too worried about their futures. They can't study, they can't work, they can't do anywhere. They can't go out of their rooms. They can't go out of their houses.
US President Joe Biden has said that the US is on pace to meet a 31st August deadline for evacuations, despite previous calls from allies for an extension. In a televised address after the G7 meeting, Biden said the Taliban must not disrupt US operations or access to Kabul airport for the deadline to be met. He recognized the success of the mission will depend largely on cooperation from the Taliban.
First, on evacuation. We agreed that we will continue to our close cooperation to get people out as efficiently and safely as possible. We are currently on a pace to finish by August the 31st. The sooner we can finish, the better. Each day of operations brings added risk to our troops. But the completion by August 31st depends upon the Taliban continuing to cooperate and allow access to the airport for those who we're transporting out, and no disruption to our operations. In addition, I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency planning to adjust the timetable, should that become necessary.
US President has faced political pressure to extend the withdrawal deadline from US allies in Europe, such as the UK, as well as from his own party in Washington. However, Biden made clear that he believes the sooner the US can finish the evacuation operation, the better.
I'm also mindful of the increasing risks that I've been briefed on, and the need to factor those risks in. They're real and significant challenges that we also have to take into consideration. The longer we stay, starting with the acute and growing risk of an attack by a terrorist group known as ISIS-K, an ISIS affiliate in Afghanistan, which is a sworn enemy of the Taliban as well. Every day we're on the ground is another day we know that ISIS-K is seeking to target the airport and attack both U.S. and allied forces and innocent civilians.
Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat has said that the nation is committed to ensure that we have terrorist-free environment. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, we will make sure that any activity which is likely to flow out of Afghanistan and then finds its way into India, it will be dealt with in the manner in which we are dealing with terrorism in the country. Speaking at an interactive session with United States Commander of Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral John Aquilino, on the India-US partnership securing the 21st century, General Bipin Rawat also said that if any support is forthcoming from coordinations, at least identifying the terrorists or intelligence to fight this war on terror, that would be welcome.
Nation is committed to ensure that we have a terrorist-free environment in the region. So as far as Afghanistan is concerned, we will make sure that any activity which is likely to flow out of Afghanistan and then find its way into India will be dealt with in the manner in which we are dealing with terrorism in our country. And I think if any other support can be forthcoming from the coordinations in at least identifying the terrorists and getting some intelligence input to fight this global war on terrorism, I think that would be welcome.
United States Commander of Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral John Aquilino, who is visiting India, said that there is close coordination between India and between Central Command to ensure that our citizens are safe.
The United States is committed to ensure we get all of our citizens out and the citizens of our partner. There's been close coordination between India and between Central Command to ensure that our citizens are safe and extracted.
Let's now move on to our developing story. Owing to prevailing security situation in Afghanistan, the government of India has decided that all Afghan nationals must travel to India only on e-visa. Ministry of Home Affairs is Sept, and I quote, owing to the prevailing security situation in Afghanistan and streamlining of the visa process by introduction of the E-Emergency X Miscellaneous Visa, it has been decided that all Afghan nationals henceforth must travel to India only on e-visa. The statement said that, keeping in view some reports that certain passports of Afghan nationals have been misplaced, previously issued visas to all Afghan nationals who are presently not in India stand invalidated with immediate effect. Afghan nationals wishing to travel to India may apply for e-visa. So e-visa is the only route if you are an Afghan national to apply for and to come to India. Well, the Union Cabinet under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Narendra Modi today approved the highest ever fair and remunerative price for sugarcane to 290 rupees per quintal. The decision will benefit 5 crore sugarcane farmers and their dependents.
Fair and remunerative price FRP जो शुगर केन पे दिया जाता है उसको बढ़ाकर 290 रुपए प्रति क्विंटल करने का निर्णय लिया गया, जो 10% रिकवरी के ऊपर आधारित होगा। जब रिकवरी 10% से अधिक हो जाती है तो उसका प्रोपोर्शनेट 0.1% इंक्रीज के लिए, हर 0.1% इंक्रीज के लिए अधिकांश 2 रुपए 90 पैसे प्रति क्विंटल और दिया जाता है और न्यूनतम बेसिक जो प्राइस मिलती है उसको भी 9.5% पर रोका गया है कि 9.5% से कम अगर किसी किसान का रिकवरी होती है तो 9.5% पे ही आधारित उनको 275 रुपए 50 पैसे प्रति क्विंटल उनको भी मिलेगा।
And with that, we come to the close of this edition of Midday Prime. If you haven't gotten yourself vaccinated so far, do get vaccinated. That's about it. Thanks for watching.
Changing